Well, I was here because it's a Friday, and the Senate schedule has had us off on Fridays. I think that's going to change next year, and I'm very happy about that. I am one of those, ever since my days in the House, that urged for a professional work week for the Congress. I think we should work Mondays through Fridays, and there should be an anticipation that we even stay in this region over some weekends, so that you don't always running back and forth to your home, either district or state. So I'm here because we had planned, Robin's been trying to get me at the SMART conference for the last couple of years, and it worked that I could participate in it. To me, it's remarkable that we've organized a region of the country recognizing that we have federal facilities that make a huge difference for economic growth, and that if we connect to small businesses, we will not only create more jobs, and we will, but we also will get more technology into solving problems. Yes, it starts with the government solving a problem on a mission at Fort Detrick and dealing with Ebola or something like that, and how do we deal with that. But it also then has civilian applications as to how we develop technology and growth of jobs, for civilian job growth. So I wanted to go to that conference and participate in it, get to meet the people. I had a chance not only to speak, but also to meet a lot of the major players, including one person who's located in Pennsylvania who's coming to Maryland with some jobs, which was good. So we make those type of connections. And being here, we always like to reach out, come by and say hello. But that was the main reason why I'm here. But as I said earlier, in the last 7 weeks that we've been in recess, I've been to Western Maryland, I don't know how many times. Certainly at least half a dozen times, including all the way out to Garrett. So it's given me a chance to come by and take the temperature.
And in that time, there's been quite a significant change. So it'll be interesting, I think our readers, and certainly we are interested in hearing sort of how you're anticipating that change will impact the Senate and indeed, Congress.
Well, the fundamental challenge is the same. That is, we've got huge problems. Congress has not dealt with those problems. We have divided government. We have Congress now controlled both the House and Senate by the Republicans. The Republicans do not have 60 votes, so therefore there is still a need for cooperation if the Senate works efficiently to get its work done. And you have President Obama, who represents the policies that are different than what the Republicans would want to see policy development. But there are many areas where there really isn't that strong of a difference that couldn't be resolved. Immigration is one I mentioned immediately. We were able to come together in the Senate over a year ago on immigration reform. It is not, it's not a progressive solution, it's not a conservative solution, it's a middle ground solution of dealing with a broken immigration system. And there's clear votes in the Congress to pass that, both the House and Senate. For political reasons, it didn't move. Now the president's talking about moving ahead on doing it through regulation, through his power of his pen. I'm for congressional action. It's, first of all, stronger when we speak from the Congress. Secondly, it's more likely to remain permanent policy if we can do it by legislation, which is important for people to plan their lives. And it's less confrontational when it's done with bipartisan participation. Now, it may not be possible for Congress to act. And if Congress can't act, the president has to use his responsibility to carry out what he has to do. So I'm hopeful that the first sign of progress will be on the budget. We can't afford any more government shutdowns, sequestration, or continuing resolutions. We need a budget. I think that line probably got the biggest positive response at the conference from the military particularly. And it's interesting, the generals are not as concerned about how much money is budgeted, that they have a budget and they can plan. Because we have pretty talented people who can plan if they know what it is. And we have a private sector who knows how to respond if they know what the rules are. So I think predictability is perhaps the most important thing that's been lacking in the last Congress that I hope that we'll be able to deal with. So I hope the budget's the first thing. We can pass an omnibus in the lame duck, and then pass regular appropriation bills in the next Congress. My colleague, Senator Mikulski, is working very hard on that issue. I hope we can pass a transportation bill, 6-year transportation bill, so when Governor-elect Hogan takes the oath of office, he'll know exactly what his federal partnership is, and then he can do his planning at the state level, and he can make decisions as to what we can do about the congestion coming through this region, and give you some long-term plans as to what to expect and what not to expect, and whether that we can make the type of improvements in the metro systems leading into our 2 urban centers, major urban centers, with these huge investments, but so we have some plans on that. A 6-year transportation bill would help us with that. Quite frankly, the Environment and Public Works Committee I serve on, we had a unanimous vote on our committee on a reauthorization, 6-year reauthorization. And I am convinced we can get a significant majority on the revenues necessary to pay for that, particularly with the gasoline prices being as well as they are right now. So I think that could be done. I think we can get Republicans and Democrats to agree on that type of a program. I hope we can get that done early in the next Congress. I hope we can get tax reform done. It's going to be challenging because there's going to be a real pull, particularly from the Republicans, to pull it as far to the right as possible. But if we reach agreements that this is not about the amount of revenue, but how we collect the revenue, so that when you look at cutting some taxes and raising others, but it equals the same amount, that's not a tax increase. That's tax reform. And we can, if Republicans are prepared to talk on those terms, and by the way, most I think are, but they get pulled by a minority within their caucus. If we can overcome that, then I think we have a real chance. I serve on the Finance Committee, and I've talked to many Republicans. I've worked very closely with Rob Portman, a Republican from Cincinnati, in the past, and we've talked about working together. I've talked to Senator Hatch several times about radical tax reform that he is interested in working with me on to change the way that we collect taxes in this country so that we could have the most competitive tax code in the industrial world rather than being at a competitive disadvantage. And it can be more progressive than our current tax code, which Senator Hatch is willing to talk about. So those are the type of debates and discussions I hope we can get done in the next Congress. And I can tell you that's what I'm going to be doing. I'll be working on every one of those issues. On the Bay, we have a challenge. We're going to have environmental challenges. Got to be realistic about that. Republicans have shown their cards here. We know what they passed in the last Congress, many anti-environmental riders. I think it would be very detrimental to public health, very detrimental to clean water, clean air, and could have a real impact on the progress we've made on the Chesapeake Bay. So I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen. I would like to tell you I'll be working on an affirmative agenda to do more. I think I'll be busy with a defensive agenda to try to block bad stuff from happening. And I will be there blocking as much as I can that bad stuff from happening.
You laid out several things that you hope Congress can work together on, and headlines today are, of course, that despite the threats or warnings from the Republican leadership, Obama seems committed to moving ahead under executive action on immigration, and the warnings, of course, have been that this is playing with fire, I think is what Boehner said. How do you see that playing out, and is that really going to destroy any chances for collaborative action?
Well, let me speak on this on 2 separate levels so we understand. First, from the President's point of view, I understand his frustration. He's been waiting over a year, probably almost a year and a half now on the immigration bill. I don't know when it passed, but it's been well over a year. He's been waiting a long time. I haven't heard anything from Speaker Boehner about moving an immigration bill. He says, let's wait and talk, etc. But I haven't heard anything. Now, I was not in the meeting with the President and the Speaker, so I don't know what happened in that meeting. And maybe something transpired that would change my view on this. But what I've heard today is virtually no hope that the House will move a comprehensive immigration reform bill. And people's lives are on hold. So we're talking about people's lives. This is not just a game. This is people trying to get on with their lives. Our system is broken. badly broken. It's not just the people who are undocumented that are here, the people who are today in Central America deciding whether their kids are going to come to our border. This is a crisis. So I understand what the president wants to do, and I think he has to be president of the United States and act and do what he thinks is right. The other level. I believe in Congress. I believe in legislating. I believe in working together. We've got to listen to each other. We've been two ships passing in the night. The Republicans think they're right. The Democrats think they're right. I've gone through this. Whether, why didn't we let them offer amendments? Why do they use the filibuster so often? We don't understand them. They don't understand us. We've got to listen to each other. So I am sympathetic to trying to find out a way. I don't want to put more fuel on the fire. I want to try to find out a way we can sit down and talk. And therefore, I'm not totally with this president on all the tactics he uses, because I want to see the legislative process work. And I hope we can reach out. I know I've talked to some of my colleagues on this specific issue, whether there's a way that we can find some common ground. And I hope we can find some common ground.
Do you mind if I ask you, who among the Republicans, either the new members coming in or the members do you think you can work with specifically?
You know, most. I've already mentioned Rob Portman. Rob Portman's, I have a track record. We're going to work on pension reform together. We're working on health care. We had a meeting this week on Ebola with Rob Portman and I brought a group together to talk about it. And we have time, let me tell you, we have a real problem globally on dealing with issues such as Ebola. And there's a way forward on that. Senator Portman and I are going to try to encourage to move forward on that. On the Finance Committee, Senator Ency is a person who I've worked with on tax reform issues. I hope I can continue to work with him on some of the tax reform issues. Senator Crapo and I have worked on some healthcare issues together, and I expect I will be able to work with Senator Crapo on those issues. Senator Roberts and I have worked together on several issues, and I expect to continue with some energy issues. I continue to work with him on those issues. So there's most of the members of the Finance Committee I have pretty good relations with, but that's just in one committee.
Right.
Environment and Public Works Committee, this is, let me just share with you. I've worked with Senator Vitter on two major issues we've worked together. We've come close, we haven't been able to reach the finish line. One was renewable fuel standards. I thought the two of us had a pretty good understanding. We couldn't convince the groups. And I think part of it was the control of the Senate issue, if they recognized they would be in a stronger position in the next Congress. Bottom line is they need 60 votes. So I think I can work with Senator Vitter on the renewable fuel standards issue. We were also getting close on chemical safety, which is a huge issue to try to resolve the chemical safety laws in this country. So I think I can work with him on several of the major issues. Senator Inhofe and I are good friends. We totally disagree on climate change. I'm not going to talk to him about climate change, okay? But we agree on a lot of things. So I am optimistic on transportation that I can work closely with Senator and get some things done. And where that becomes important, it becomes important in a couple issues. It becomes important on issues like where's the FBI going to be located? It comes through the EPW, that committee. Senator Inhofe is going to be the chairman of that committee. I think I can work with Senator Inhofe. I think I can work with him, Senator Inhofe, on an issue where we disagree, but I think we can work some issues out on local flexibility on the use of transportation funds, which is critically important to me, critically important to our state. You talk about a lot of what we've been able to do in enhancements, dealing with trails, dealing with bike safety, dealing with road pool sides, which are very important for local governments. I, along with Senator Cochran, who will be chairman of the Appropriations Committee, which is a friend of mine from Mississippi, have worked on that issue. Expect to work on that again, get that done. So there are areas that, and the list goes on and on and on. Senator McCain and I have a soulmate on the human rights issues with Senator McCain. The two of us have formed a very close bond on dealing with human rights violators around the world, and we're going to continue to. And Senator Wicker, who will be chairman of the co-chair of the Helsinki Commission, we worked together on a lot of the Ukraine issues, on human rights violations, on those matters. Senator Rubio and I have worked on religious freedom in China. We'll continue that partnership on those issues. Senator Paul and I are working on voter restoration, on democracy restoration, on people who've completed their criminal sentences being able to have their voting rights restored. Two of us hope to get together on a common bill on that issue. So I must tell you, I can only think of a couple members of Congress, the Senate, who I will not name by name, who I don't think I can work with. But I think the overwhelming majority I have worked with in the past, and obviously it's those that are on the committees that I serve on, which is the first area that you look for working relationships, but it goes even beyond that. So I have no difficulty in figuring out how I'm going to work in this Congress. Now, where it becomes real challenging is when it's not up to us. It's not up to Senator Portman and me. It's not up to Senator Inhofe and me or others, but it's taken over by the institutional politics and becomes a Boehner, Mitch McConnell, Pelosi, Reid issue, or Obama. And when it gets to that level, we have not had much success over the last 2 years.
What do you think the message was that voters were sending to the politicians on election day? And what's your takeaway from that?
I think the main message was that they didn't believe we were effective in representing their views. They didn't think the government was working. They saw an Ebola crisis and they said, what are you doing to protect us? They saw ISIL and they were fearing that their neighborhoods were not safe. They saw an affordable care rollout that left a lot to be desired. They saw just time and time again, they didn't think government was doing what they thought government should be doing. They didn't disagree with the policies, they just didn't think we were doing it right. And they didn't think it made much more difference to keep certain people in office, so they didn't show up. They didn't vote. In Maryland, that was a particular problem. As you know, Prince George's County, Montgomery County, Baltimore City, areas that Democrats usually do very well, were at the bottom on voter turnout. Montgomery County, you normally have a huge voter turnout. This is a county that prides itself in government participation. So they didn't think it made any difference, and they were disappointed by those who had power and what they were doing to protect their interests. So I think that was a large part of it nationally, but it also affected us in Maryland. Maryland, there was local politics involved with Governor O'Malley and taxes and issues like that certainly played a significant role in what happened and Larry Hogan's appeal.
How emotional was it yesterday? Yeah, the caucus.
Very emotional.
Very much, because some of them are going to be going out.
It was very emotional. It was tearful, no question. These are good people. I mean, you develop relationships, and it's always difficult. So it was very emotional.
You still think Harry Reid is the right person to lead the...
I don't think Harry Reid was responsible for what happened. The argument is usually made when things don't go well, there's got to be a change. Therefore, even if the person's not responsible, it's important for image to have a change. That was one of the arguments that was made. I don't buy into that. We have a finite number of people that are in the Senate that have been elected, and we need to take our very best. I was convinced that in the 3 or 4 critical Senate races, there's not one earthly thing we could have done to win those seats at the end of the day. There's something that might surprise you. It surprised me yesterday. The ground game in Colorado, the ground game in Louisiana, the ground game in Michigan, the ground game in Georgia, Alaska, North Carolina was great. We got our votes out. When you look at voter participation, those states, the Democrats did better than the Republicans. We got our votes out. So it was not that they sat on their hands in those states. It was in Maryland and the rest of the country, but not in those states. Our candidates were well funded. They had money. It wasn't the money issue. We lost for the reasons I said originally. We lost because they didn't believe it made much of a difference. We lost our voters in those states, and they're red states, don't get me wrong. So it's more conservative than Maryland. So the message was not Harry Reid. In all due respect, he was not the reason for it.
Are you kind of relieved you weren't on the ballot this time?
You know, it's funny, I really do love running for office. I enjoy election years, I do. I usually don't enjoy it because I usually gain weight, I usually eat more in election years. But yes, I was very happy that I was not on the ballot this year. That is very true. I mean, and the person who probably the happiest was a person named Myrna, who's my wife. She was probably the happiest that I was not on the ballot. But it was mutual. I was glad not to be on the ballot. It was a nasty year, and people were pretty direct about their views. And it was, I was out campaigning, so I got to experience it. And you could tell that people were not happy campers. By the way, they don't like Republicans. It's not that they think the Republicans are their saviors. They don't. They don't like any of us right now. Neither party is held in any esteem.
But how much of this is really, I mean, you know, the message we're hearing from pundits from Washington certainly is that a lot of this blame can be laid at the feet of the president because he's become extraordinarily unpopular. I mean, even Dana Milbank, you know, in his comment earlier this week was talking about the bubble that seems to be surrounding the president. Now, I don't imagine criticize the president.
Well, no, I take it at both levels. I told you the same thing with regulation.
Yeah.
You look at the president's record, it's quite remarkable what he's been able to get done. He saved the auto industry, the unemployment rates are the lowest they've been, and created 55 consecutive months of job growth, like 10 million new jobs created, and you go through the whole litany, what he's been able to do. So the carbon footprint of America has been dramatically reduced. Energy prices are low, stock markets are at a high. I mean, you go through the record, it's a pretty impressive record considering the difficulty he had. Internationally, we have more respect in the international community we've had in many, many times. We have coalitions working. The Iranian coalition is held up on sanctions. He got chemical weapons out of Syria. I mean, in all due respect, the president has a pretty good record, okay?
Right.
Was he a drag to us winning, holding the Senate? Absolutely he was. It was the president on the ballot. Mark Udall wasn't on the ballot. President Obama was on the ballot. Mary Landrieu wasn't on the ballot. The president's on the ballot. You look at the ads that the Republicans ran, I think it was 90% of the ads that they ran mentioned President Obama.
Well, I mean, even down to the local level here, with the county executive race.
So it clearly was an election on President Obama. So yes, there was something. By not legally being on the ballot, he couldn't present his case directly. And the surrogates, the senators, the local people who were running, were incapable, for whatever reasons, to counter that. And it's very difficult when you are a county council person or a state legislator or a congressman or a senator to run a campaign defending the president. It's not what you do. You run a campaign trying to present your own, and it didn't work. And that's why I said I don't believe it was Harry Reid. I really do believe it was a broader problem that we had. And I hold a little bit of solace in that it was not a victory for the Republican policies. It's, I think, a wake-up call to Democrats that we have to represent middle-income families much more aggressively and effectively than we have in the past, and their values. And we have to be very much out there fighting for what they believe in, and they have to know that we're fighting for what they believe in. We're not going to win all the fights, but they did not get that view in this election, that we were out there fighting for what they believe in and their problems, their concerns and their priorities. They didn't believe we were out there doing what we had to do.
One thing absent from your list of accomplishments was the Affordable Care Act.
And Affordable Care.
Is it working? And
Absolutely.
will you accept significant changes to it?
would tend to define significant change. The Affordable
Well, still
Care
waiting to see
Act,
what
I
they are,
apologize.
right?
I should have mentioned that, and I'm going to go back and revise my list. I mean, we brought down healthcare, the President brought down significantly the growth rate of healthcare costs, the number of people who with insurance today, the number of uninsured have dropped dramatically. The abusive practices of health insurance companies are a thing of the past. We're getting value, we're getting choice. People have affordable coverage right now. Seniors have much better coverage under Medicare. Medicare is much more solvent than it was before the Affordable Care Act. Yes, all that is absolutely true. Now, will we accept a repeal of the Affordable Care Act? No. We will do it. And I think the Republicans are just going to do their thing and say that they tried and they couldn't with President Obama there, and that's why you have to elect a Republican president in 2 years if you want to get rid of it. And they'll keep saying things that aren't true. They say it over and over again. They say that on Keystone. They say this is energy policy for America. There's no energy policy for America on Keystone. There is no energy policy for our country. This is pure and simple an oil industry giveaway, in my view. I mean, I think it's wrong what we're doing. It creates temporary jobs. It doesn't create permanent jobs. It puts this horrible, this pollutant oil through our country rather than Canada because they don't want it through their territory. But anyway, the Republicans keep saying it does things and it doesn't do those things. And the same thing is true with the Affordable Care Act. They'll keep saying these terrible things, these high premium increases. What did we have before the Affordable Care Act? Does anybody remember that every year employers came to us and said, we have to reduce your coverage because otherwise we're going to have a 25% premium increase? You all went through it, I'm sure. You put more on the families. Yeah, everybody did that. And they got less coverage and they paid more premiums before we passed the Affordable Care Act, and you didn't cover certain things. So now we have good coverage, and we have honest pricing, and we have rates going up slower than they did before. We're not going to compromise that. That fundamental is solid. Now, should we get rid of the medical device tax? Absolutely. We never should have passed that originally. Should we look at the definition of employment so that we can game the system with 30 hours versus 40 hours? I have no problem with that. It's not a fundamental issue. It's more figure out ways we can deal with that. Should we look at ways that we can get more competition in the system? Fine, I'm okay on that. So now there's plenty of areas that Democrats and Republicans can agree on. We've been trying to do that since we passed the bill. They didn't want to take up any health care bill. They want to just complain about it. I hope now that they have the control and they're talking about these things that they'll do it. It's sort of like immigration. You know, all they want to do is border security. We've already done that. In healthcare, all they want to do is repeal taxes. Okay, we got to pay for things. You can't just repeal taxes. You can't repeal the medical device tax and claim that that doesn't cost any money. It does cost money. It's now in our budget. So let's do it in context to a budget. So that's going to be the problem that we're going to have with Republicans. But I'm all for looking at ways that we can deal with it, work together on that.